Hi, my name is Claudia Makadristo and I'm the regional manager for Seedstars in Africa. So today I wanted to answer a couple of questions as it relates to how do you effectively conduct entrepreneurship education virtually, especially as this has been accelerated a little bit due to the current pandemic that is happening. So we have definitely seen that before there was a lot of physical entrepreneurship training. As a matter of fact, we have always conducted our trainings physical as well. We were quite lucky as a company because we actually already had quite a bit of training virtually. Now, the reason that we had that as Seedstars is because we wanted to ensure that our trainings were as inclusive as it could be. Doing trainings physically can be quite intensive and also quite expensive as well. And of course, you have to have the available human resources to be in these places physically to support these entrepreneurs. As you might imagine, working in across 90 plus emerging markets, we always had this hybrid model where we would be able to provide entrepreneurship education at any time, at any moment for everyone, both physically and virtually. So if anything, what the pandemic has done is accelerate what we already wanted to do, which is to go towards this virtual way of actually teaching entrepreneurship. And due to the pandemic, a lot of other entrepreneurship support organizations have been kind of forced into this direction as well. So the reason why virtual entrepreneurship education is very interesting to consider for anyone wanting to support entrepreneurs globally and across emerging markets is that it really allows you to be more inclusive. If you do something physical, a lot of times people are obviously bound by or limited by certain geographies. So, for example, you might go to a country such as Mozambique, but physically you might only have the resources or be able to provide vocational training in Maputo, which is the capital. So if you do something virtual, all of a sudden you open the scope of participants that you could potentially have in these programs. So now you are actually able to get entrepreneurs from other places from the country that might have had some difficulties usually traveling to the capital to be part of those programs. So if anything, what the pandemic has really done for a lot of different organizations is to really rethink the way that we provide entrepreneurship education and to really reflect on how do we do that effectively if the interaction is actually via a screen and not in person. So there's a couple of things that you probably want to take into account. The first thing is really using the right tools, so tools that are easy to use for entrepreneurs that don't bring too many complications. And of course, you also have to account for tools that, don't really cause a lot of bandwidth issues and also don't really consume a lot of data as well, especially when you provide entrepreneurship education in emerging markets. Data, unfortunately, in many of these countries is quite expensive. So we need to be sure at all times that entrepreneurs also have the means to actually have these right tools and that we are not sucking up all their data through our programming. Secondly, it's important to find different ways to engage. Obviously, virtually, a lot can be done. But you will never really replace that human interaction and experience that you get face to face. So it's really important that you find different ways to engage. There's a lot of very interesting tools out there. So use those tools into your advantage, whether it's, creating certain breakout rooms on Zoom, for example, having polls where you're doing a presentation, but people can also easily vote for maybe what is the best answer. There's also tools such as Miro, which allows you to do online collaboration and brainstorming as well. And these most of the times are tools that are very easy to use. Many of them are free as well. So it's important that you find the right balance of interacting with them and avoid being in a situation where you are just talking to a screen and that there's no room for any interaction by the participants of the startups. Then it's also important that you allow for flexibility, and I think that this is one of the interesting things about doing vocational training for entrepreneurs virtually, because you can be a bit flexible. There's a lot that you can pre-record, that people can consult after the training is done. If they miss a training, they can rewatch some of the recordings. So this is actually one of the things that this virtual type of doing entrepreneurship actually gives to the participants as well. So it allows you to be more flexible, and it's also important that in that programming you allow participants to be a bit flexible. There's always issues such as internet connection maybe not working or not being stable enough. So it's important that participants do not miss out on crucial content for the actual engagement. Interesting one. I think that a lot of organizations are extremely aware that we need to do more to provide more women with the opportunities to actually be able to access entrepreneurial training for a couple of reasons, right? So first of all, it's not just a tick off the box, great to have women. Women are known to actually be great business opportunities, right? Like women are known to represent one of the strongest investment or portfolio companies for many investors, for example. Women also are quite interesting because as you develop them, they typically reinvest their earnings and funds and successes back into their children. So there is indeed this multiplier effect of supporting women. We know that if we give women the right opportunities, that they can be a very viable business opportunity for any investor looking to invest. So everyone eventually wins. One of the biggest reasons why it's difficult, there's many reasons why it's difficult for women to actually access entrepreneurship education. It can be social norms, it can be that it's just, maybe a bit expensive, but a lot of times it's also related to things such as flexibility. Women, unfortunately, have a lot of other obligations that they have as well. So if we're designing an entrepreneurship education program that is not flexible enough and it happens exactly at the same time where a woman that has children is actually going to drop off their children or at school, you have an issue. So I think when it comes to supporting women entrepreneurs and getting more women in the program and being inclusive, it is just important that we also design the program in a way that we're not limiting these women from participating. And going back to my point, this flexibility and a virtual way of teaching entrepreneurship education actually allows us to do that in much easier ways than we might be able to do if we run an actual physical program, I have to say. Also important that we look at the concept of gender equity versus gender equality. Gender equality is really about having equal outcomes, let's say for women, and then gender equity is really more focusing on we understand and realize that women and men are different. Women can have babies, men cannot have babies, but we need to make sure that this doesn't serve as a burden for actually getting what they need to get. So it is important, to my example, that when you're dealing with a woman and they do have children or other responsibilities that might limit them, that we take that into account in the virtual program design as well. So this was my answer to a couple of questions on what to think of when we are designing programs or virtual programs in the space of entrepreneurship education. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to ask us more questions and we'll be happy to answer them.